Today, we're going to take a deep dive into my Western Mediterranean cruise on the massive Costa Smeralda. We'll check out all of the venues, my stateroom, and of course all of the food. So let's get into it. Welcome to Italy. If you'd like to know the exact fare that I paid for this cruise, or my next 5 videos in queue, please check out the description below. And if you're new here, hi there and welcome, my name is Kevin. You found yourself on a channel that takes unbiased travel content pretty seriously. I make airline trip reports, high-end hotel reviews, and cruise tours as well. I always film without the company's knowledge to be sure to get a true experience, and then give you nothing more than my personal, honest, unbiased opinion. Right now, we're on our way to the cruise port in Civitavecchia, undoubtedly the best named town in Italy. Anytime you see a cruise starting in or visiting Rome, it's indeed docking in Civitavecchia. The cruise port is around a 45-minute drive from Rome's Fiumicino airport, or around an hour from central Rome. As we go through the painless check-in process to get on board, let me just preface this video and say if you've never sailed with Costa before, I'd highly suggest checking out my other Costa Cruises video first. It's linked above and in the description. In that video, I break down exactly what makes Costa Cruises different from other cruise lines, to give you a good idea of what sort of expectations you should have when booking your next cruise. There are a lot of tidbits about Costa specifically that I'm not going to be touching on in this video as to not be repetitive. As for this video, well, this is going to be a full ship tour and review of my specific cruise in late 2022 on board the Costa Smeralda. I was on a 7-night Western Mediterranean itinerary that began and ended in Rome. So, how are we going to navigate this review for such a massive ship? Well, we're going to start out likely where you would board the ship and check out the area immediately around it first. Then we'll head up to my stateroom for a full tour, and then we'll go efficiently, deck by deck, top to bottom, and explore everything that the Smeralda has to offer. Right now, we're kind of in the heart of the ship, likely one of the first places that you'll see when you step on board. This is the ground floor of the Il Colosseo entertainment venue, which hosts a variety of shows and acts each night, which we'll take a look at a bit later in this tour. The venue is cleverly designed with LED screens all around, which are used throughout the day. Early mornings, they display images of sunrises. When in port, they're themed with the city's sights, and at night, they set the mood for the evening. By the way, we are now on Deck 6. Deck 4 and 5 are primarily staterooms with just one restaurant on Deck 5. Just in front of us, we have the largest of the coffee shops on board. I'll point out, there are precisely, let me count them, 0 coffee shops open before 7 a.m. For me personally, that is really late. So make sure you keep that in mind if you are a coffee fanatic like I am. One level up, just off the Colosseum, is the ill-designed guest relations area. There's a funny word out there that begins with cluster and ends with a word that rhymes with duck. And that is precisely how I would describe this area during the daytime. Even with their clever automated system for queuing to speak to an agent, it was still always 89% of the way to a disaster zone. This would be okay if it wasn't for the fact that the Costa Cruises app is not available for iPhone users in the US, so you will undoubtedly need to be here at some point. Just on the other side is the second coffee shop to open of the day. As we take a peek at a few of the onboard shops and move on to the casino, let me just give you a piece of advice if you have an American-style coffee order, even if it's just as simple as mine, an iced Americano. On the first day, find who looks to be the friendliest barista on board. Explain in detail what you'd like and how you'd like it. Have a bit of patience, and then when your drink comes out correctly, tip that barista 20 euros and tell them you'll be back every single day. The casino, while a decent size, does seem a bit small for a ship that can carry over 6,000 passengers. Thankfully though, it is smoke-free. There is one really annoying place that you can smoke though, which I'll touch on soon. Just adjacent is the Code Museum, short for Costa Design Museum, which is a 4,000 square foot pass-through attraction of sorts, which lays out the modern history of just about anything designed in Italy. Beyond being likely the most eye-catching part of the ship, I actually did like the space and thought it was well worth a look around on a cruise which is so distinctly Italian. Speaking of distinctly Italian, can we please briefly speak about the design? It caught me off guard. While I'm not pretending to know Costa's target demographic better than they do, I do have to say that there were quite a few times when the design just came off as plain tacky or garish. Thankfully though, Deck 9, the Napoli deck, was much more toned down, and that's where my stateroom was. Unlike many cruise lines, Costa does not try to nickel and dime you to death with cabin categories. While it's very common these days for some cruise lines to have more than 15 different categories just for veranda staterooms, this entire ship only has 10 categories total. 2 of those are veranda staterooms, and there is one wonderful little loophole in that simplified system. The 2 veranda categories are Classic or Premium. Within the Premium category, there are a series of rooms smack in the middle of the ship which are on a rounded bump out. All of these rooms have a serious amount of extra space. The balcony is moderately larger, but inside the room itself is over 3 feet longer. In a cruise stateroom, that's like 1.5 miles. Since the beds are able to be combined into a queen or separated into 2 twins, there is unfortunately only an outlet on one side of the bed, with the other hidden behind the center of the bed. The rooms themselves, I gotta say, I was really impressed by for a couple of reasons. First up, they were spotless. I mean, really clean. Likely the cleanest stateroom that I've had on my 19 cruises over the years. Second up was the simplistic design. Finishes and colors, that's up for debate as to whether you like it or not, but I'm talking about the layout and the amount of space dedicated to each area. Across from the bed is a decent sized TV, and then there's a nicely sized vanity area and working area. Hidden behind the telephone was a US and Europin plug as well as a USB port. This entire area over here is where all of the extra space in the room actually is, as you won't find this second vanity area in standard staterooms. Whether or not you need a second vanity area or not, I can tell you it's just nice to have a few extra square feet to walk around. The only truly bad or odd design feature in the room was the frosted glass panel, which has the shower on the other side, but a curtain on the outside. So like I said recently at the Hyatt Centric in Tokyo, this is a room to share with someone that you trust. Storage-wise, I'd say the room is giving you a standard amount of space with a smaller mini closet near the front door that perhaps makes up for a lack of drawers throughout the room. Next to that is the temperature control, and then the larger full closet is on the other side of the bathroom door. One note about laundry that I absolutely love from Costa. They have something called Magic Bag. Costa doesn't really advertise this, and before sailings I tried to research it and thought it was just for the end of the cruise. But in fact, you can at any time use the Magic Bag service. It's €19 for a full bag of laundry up to 25 pieces. In case this needs saying, that's a very good deal. The bathroom was clean, fresh, and modern, and while it's not quite the typical layout, in this case, sharing the space with the 2 outer closets, there was certainly enough space for everything, and it felt a lot larger than my next stateroom on Celebrity, which felt like an itsy-bitsy miniature room compared to this one. One decent shower head, and the shower does have a proper glass door. I do wish for soap though that they'd use more than just a single unlabeled bottle though. Then we have the balcony, which is always one of my favorite places on any cruise ship. This one was spacious and had 2 comfortable chairs and a small table. Deck 9 is the lowest floor for non-porthole style balcony cabins. But it's still well above the lifeboats, so it's a completely unobstructed view. And since we're in the middle of that bump out, we really do have the best views on this side of the ship. Oh, and the annoying place where smoking is allowed? Balconies. So, there's a thing called wind. Basically, it's moving air. The room next to me had at least one smoker in it, and I would need to close my stateroom door anytime he went outside to smoke. Otherwise, my entire room would smell of smoke. Costa really needs to do better here and get with the times. Okay, before we continue the tour from top to bottom, allow me to show you one of my favorite, truly hidden spots on board. On Deck 8, walk to the front and just keep walking. Don't look at the deck plans because it's literally not on there. In fact, don't look at the deck plans at all because they really are terrible. So many venues have different names than what's published on the deck plans. As I mentioned in my Costa Cruises video, Costa and technology are not really on speaking terms at the moment. Anyway, it's a great lounging area that is probably best for not too windy days. But either way, just gives you a very good perspective and is a perfect place to jump up to Deck 18. So despite being such a huge ship, it seems like Costa didn't quite put a grand old pool in the budget. So we have 4 disjointed pools on the ship, 3 outdoor and 1 indoor. This is the largest of the 3 outdoors and is just lacking a big dose of needed personality. Just up there on Deck 19 is the elite lounging area, which is only accessible by fancy people in certain categories of rooms. Let's be honest though, it doesn't look like much is going on up there. This could be anecdotal, but I found myself often comparing the outdoor spaces on board here to big Spanish hotel chains such as Riu, Meliá, Iberostar, and Barceló. Function over form, lots of white, and aquatic colorful accents. Which inevitably brings me to the age-old question, why aren't there any people in your videos? Well, I try to disturb other paying guests as little as possible. And by disturb, I mean walk around for hours a day during peak times with the camera in my hand. Walking to the very front of the ship now is the lounging area called Sétimo Cielo. I do a lot of my filming in the early mornings or in early afternoons on days when we're in a pretty popular port. Of course, there are some exceptions to this, but you get the picture. One thing I would say though is, don't ever make assumptions about the demographics on board just based on the people that you'll see in my videos, as it's likely not representative. Just around the corner we have the Sétimo Cielo bar. On board this cruise were many, dare I say hundreds, of multi-generational families on holiday. 3, sometimes 4 generations traveling together, and many times with over 10 members traveling in the same party. Age-wise, this sailing was honestly split pretty equally, so if we look at under 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and 60 and above, I would bet money that those 4 were around even. If you want to know more demographics about Costa in general, and the situation on board concerning languages in use, please check out my prior video. Now, we're heading up to my favorite spot on board, the Passeggiata Volare. This starts on Deck 18 and rises up to be level with Deck 19. By the way, each deck does have an actual name in addition to the number, such as Bellagio, Genoa, Posciano, and so on. But for my own sanity, and considering my lack of Italian, I'm just using the numbers. Anyone who watches this channel knows that I'm a bit of a sunrise fanatic. And actually, that's one of the reasons why I love cruising so much. There are truly few things on Earth better to me than a silent ship at sunrise pulling into a new port. So this platform up here facilitated some really beautiful time lapses. Here we are arriving into Marseille. I'll mention one thing that I really do like about Costa are their variety of Western Mediterranean ports. It wasn't many years ago that it seemed like Celebrity Princess and the like didn't realize that there was more to the Mediterranean than Barcelona, Nice, and Rome. Costa, for decades though, has been sailing to many destinations across the Balearic Islands, Sardinia, Sicily, and of course loads of small and large ports alike around mainland Italy. We are now heading to the rear of the ship, still on Deck 18, to the Piazza di Spagna, which I do believe seems to be the most underutilized space I've ever seen on any ship. I'll explain that in a bit. This 3-story amphitheater of sorts has a glass floor walkway around the stern of the ship. Thank God there is a tiny walkway on the side that isn't glass. Right now we're in the port of Savona, which is fairly close to Genoa and is as close as you're going to get to what would be a home port for Costa. As we take a look at the Orizzonte bar and the Deck 19 lounges above it, let's quickly talk about Costa. Way back in the mid-1800s, they began a cargo sailing business. For around 100 years, they continued before having some ships built in the 1950s to hold passengers and cargo. These ships were used to ferry passengers between Genoa and Buenos Aires via Rio de Janeiro. Their expansion continued, and in the 1980s they put the focus on becoming a modern passenger cruise line, leading up to their full acquisition in 2000 by Carnival Cruise Lines Group. At the time, Costa was the largest player in the European cruise market, with a near 20% share. Currently, Costa has 10 ships in their fleet, some of them identical in basic design to some Carnival ships. 2 of their ships are currently leased out though, one of them to Carnival itself. Now down one deck to 17, which I do think is the best place to be in the rear of the ship when setting sail. Then we have this ship, the Costa Smeralda. She has one twin, the Costa Toscana, but many cousins. This ship is part of Carnival's Excellence class of ships, and has a total of 9 ships in it, sailing for Costa, German subsidiary AIDA, P&O, and Carnival itself. The Carnival Celebration and Jubilee are both essentially the same ship. This class of ships also features the world's first LNG-powered passenger ships. For those of you that didn't know, like me, Smeralda means emerald in Italian and refers to the Emerald Coast on the north shore of Sardinia. Now, walking towards the front of the ship, we have pool number 2. There is a mirror copy of this pool on the other side of the ship as well. While they're a little less awkward looking during the day, they are still lacking just personality. Just in front is the Lido Caracalla, which has a small stage for occasional, keywords, occasional live music, which really was not that big of a thing on this cruise. At any given moment, you'd be more likely to see a DJ spinning than a house band playing. Just in front is the Aperol Spritz bar. You'll see many of the venues on board here are sponsored, which makes them very different from the content on this channel, which is completely unsponsored. I think one key factor in making an unbiased review is to do so without, in this case, the cruise line's knowledge. As we take a look around the small water park on board, let me say that, of course, Costa didn't give me this cruise for free, nor did any other company or entity pay for me to be here. Quite often, cruise review videos will feature a travel agent, just a friendly quote, "Hey, if you're gonna book a cruise, talk to our friend Joe." Guess what? That's a sponsorship. Did that travel agent pay for their cruise? Did the creator get a discounted travel agent rate? I don't know, and likely the viewer doesn't either. So yeah, if you enjoy honest travel content, please be sure to subscribe so you can see a whole lot more content to come. While I primarily make videos about trip reports and hotel reviews, I do have videos coming out this year for Celebrity Cruises, Royal Caribbean, and Virgin Voyages as well. If you're interested, I'd love for you to take a look at my Patreon as well, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching today. Behind the water park is the Kiki Poke Bar. You'll notice that the prices are surprisingly reasonable at 3 or 4 euros for a bowl, which leaves me conflicted. My thought is, either charge more and make it something that's really special and worth spending money on, or just include it in the cruise fare. Now we're inside the 2-level La Spiaggia, which I have mixed feelings about. I like it when ships have indoor pools, but this one was just always kind of chaotic. Maybe it's just because on other lines the indoor pool is usually adults only? Either way, there are plenty of seating areas around and hot tubs built into the mix as well. On one end, there are a few venues that are chargeable, such as the Nutella Bar for crepes and such, as well as what they're calling a street food venue, but in reality they're just selling burgers and sandwiches. Just in front of the pool area is the La Cascada Bar, which leads into the pool. One of the nicer lounge areas on board was flanking the indoor pool with plenty of nice sofas and loungers. For the record, I say plenty of loungers, but with a bit of hesitation. My cruise was around 50% capacity. There was never an issue on this cruise, especially since it wasn't during peak summer season, to find a lounger. But, just from my observations, I would imagine that when at max capacity in the summer, it would be either really difficult to find loungers anywhere on board, or perhaps they would fill every possible space with loungers, both of which don't sound too appealing. Next up is the spa and fitness center. The spa has two entrances, one is a little bit odd. For this one, I had to do what I call a drive-by shot, since it was literally never not full of people in there. As for the fitness center, it's not huge, but based on the passenger mix, I think it's adequate in size and variety of equipment. Now, we have the kids areas on board. As I've mentioned in many other videos before, I never try to gain access to film inside kids clubs because that's creepy. But we can get a general idea of the facilities here. There was a kids club, an older kids park and club, and a family-only restaurant. Then outside at the base of the Piazza di Spagna is the outdoor area of the kids park. In terms of saying the piazza is underutilized, well, this is the most lively that I ever saw it, and it was only when they brought out Peppa Pig, which happened a few days in a row. The shows were, let's be honest here, a little bit lame, even by children's standards. The only other time I saw the space out here being used was for a movie night and a couple of afternoon Zumba sessions. Decks 9 through 15 are entirely staterooms, so now we're down to the heart of the indoor common spaces starting on deck 8. Here we are in the chargeable ice cream shop. As I mentioned in my Costa video, I think they do a poor job with their chargeable venues. I'm used to referring to them as specialty venues, but honestly, most of the chargeable food venues on board just didn't feel all that special. Next up is the Bella Vista restaurant, which is probably the most traditional cruise feeling space on board. This restaurant is open throughout the day and is accessible for Costa Elite members. Still in the same part of the ship, we have the Sport Bar and the Wine Bar, both of them included with the My Drinks Plus package that I had on this cruise. At €44 per day, including tax and gratuity, it's one of the better deals out there. It includes any drink on board with a price of €9 or less. That doesn't sound like a lot, but prices on board are generally pretty low. More info about drink packages is explained in the other video. There were two restaurants that sort of remained a bit of a mystery to me while I was on board. First is the Food Laboratory, a quasi-cooking school, I believe, but never once did I actually see it open. The other being a very conceptual restaurant called Archipelago. Maybe it was just the way that they talked about it, but this restaurant seemed to be the fussiest of fussy restaurants that I've ever heard of, and inspired 0% of me to actually want to try it. And that kinda continued with the other two specialty restaurants, which included a teppanyaki and a chargeable pizzeria. Pizza is not something that I necessarily look forward to on a cruise, but it has been free on, I think, every other cruise that I've ever been on. So the fact that they charge for it on an Italian ship is mildly off-putting. Just in front of that is the sleek Ferrari bar, which overlooks the Coliseum venue. And now, time for the buffet. Here are my notes. There are nowhere near enough seats, around 900 in total for up to 6,000 passengers. The Celebrity ship that I was on just after this crude also had almost 900 seats in their buffet for a passenger capacity of around 3,000. Sometimes it was just way too busy in here. As for the food, quality-wise, it was very good. Selection-wise, for a cruise buffet, it was a little bit limited. For breakfast, it was the same items each day with a big focus put on pastries, which they would pile as high as they could on plates. Literally, you wouldn't go up to the staff and ask for 3 croissants. You would ask for a croissant, and the staff would automatically just take a new plate and start piling them up until you said stop. As you'll see in a moment, lunch and dinner followed the same format as each other. There were cold appetizers, pasta stations, and hot entrees with the accompanying salad and cold cuts and bread. By the way, was expecting much better bread on an Italian line, just saying. The lunch and dinner items were legitimately really good. Just don't expect 60 different options at each meal. Most of the food was Italian, and you should just not be expecting Indian stations or Chinese stations or other themed counters that rotate like many other cruise lines do. As for drinks, the standard free drinks are included: filter coffee and purified water, some juices, teas, and other basic drinks based on the day part. Everything else was chargeable. I kind of rushed through that so that I could talk to you about service for a bit, because it needs mentioning. In general, Costa service is good. It's efficient, it's generally friendly, but I'm not sure I'd expect years-long connections with staff like you hear about on some other lines. For the most part, it was low touch, which is fine and perfectly in line with what you're paying for. But let me tell you a story. I was traveling with some members of my family. The day this cruise ended in Rome, we were supposed to go on a Celebrity cruise from Rome. That cruise stopped in Greece. At the time, Celebrity didn't require COVID testing to board, but Greece did, no problem. Just for the sake of making things as easy as possible, I arranged to have the tests on board this ship the morning before disembarkation. Fantastic. Until one of the tests came back positive and the rest of my family went into quarantine, which in late 2022 was still part of Italian law. Quarantine for up to 21 days, I might add. Since we had no idea what the hotels for quarantine would be like in Rome, we decided they should stay on the ship for another week and just cross their fingers that they tested negative before that week finished. Honestly, this is when Costa really started to shine. From the medical crew to the reception staff, the English concierge, the nurses, even the staff at the UK call center where I had to call to book their extra week. Who knew if you wanted VIP service on Costa, you just needed to get COVID? We reserved another balcony stateroom for the next week, in the special quarantine ward on board the ship, which was a big chunk of deck 10 at the time in the rear of the ship. The price was honestly so low that I needed to ask 3 times to make sure she was telling me the total price and not per person. Since there really weren't many in quarantine on the ship, they upgraded the room to the literal largest suite on board, and honestly, they probably had better service for the next week than I did on Celebrity. They did test negative in time to be free on day 6 of that next cruise, and honestly, I just can't say enough great things about the staff on board. Flanking the buffets on deck 8 are some outdoor seating areas as well. Heading on down towards the rear of the ship, you could head to the Superba bar, or you could take a peek at some of the most awkward balcony staterooms on Earth. One issue with the outdoor dining spaces. There were often seating areas that were just unnecessarily closed or blocked off. And I'm not just talking about early in the morning or once in a while. I'm talking about consistently during meal times, when space was actually necessary. Then in the back of the ship on deck 7, we have one of the best spots on board, the Superba bar. The seating areas could have been a bit better thought out, not gonna lie, but it was a really nice space to be, especially after dark. It was also a great spot to watch the sister ship Costa Toscana, as the ships coordinated their passing each week just south of Sardinia. Just inside from that bar is Il Rugantino, an included restaurant which was open throughout the day for alternative semi-a la carte meals. The restaurant has a very distinct style which I can only describe as every piece of furniture and material that Olive Garden didn't use. Breakfast here was served family style with individual main dishes. And now we're at the piano bar, and let me mention that I am not publishing menus in these reviews for a couple of reasons. First of all, holy crap, that would be a lot of menus, and second, it's likely all totally different by now anyway. Those menus change on a very regular basis. In my cruise line videos, I'll always show you a sample of some of the menus to give you an idea of what to expect. But the reviews will likely stay menu-free for the most part. This is the Laguna Bar, which serves as the casino's stylish watering hole, just off of the Colosseum and just on the other side of Sushino, the sushi house, which was geared towards an unlimited €21 menu. In the week that I was on board, I honestly cannot remember seeing a single person eating here. We are still going with the bars, with the Campari bar next, and I'll tell you why. On board, this was a crowd that came alive at night. During the day, seemingly many spent time in the restaurants or in their rooms, but come dinner time and much later, these bars were really busy in a good way. As I mentioned with my room being so clean, it really did extend throughout the ship. When you see seat cushions and carpeting being combed daily in patterns, you know there's a bit of attention to detail going on. One random detail that engineers didn't pay attention to though were the elevators, because they were the slowest elevators that have ever existed in the history of the world. The doors took forever to open and close. The open and close buttons inside didn't actually do anything, and since in some places there were 8 elevators in one bank, sometimes someone on the far end would be pressing the button like a maniac, wondering why it kept turning the light off. Not realizing they were holding an elevator full of people 50 meters away hostage. Okay, entertainment. I'm gonna let this completely speak for itself. I'll note that these are shows from 4 different nights. And if the entertainment doesn't have any sound, it's because it has a copyright claim. But I think the sound's important, so I'm trying. Enjoy.
Luca, anzitutto sono stato io il primo di darlo. Lo so che lei era stata sempre.
I suppose their spoof on the voice was the best of the lot, but I had no idea what they were saying. If your nightly entertainment generally comes in a glass, perhaps with an ice cube in it, then you'll be fine. But if you come on Costa expecting North American cruise line style big shows and such, you're going to be in for quite a surprise. There is a small theater in the front though, but cameras were not allowed during show times. You're not missing much. After this, just 2 more bars and lounges, and then the best part of the cruise. I'm sure I'll get some questions, and rightfully so, about why I didn't put more information about the ports of call into this review. Well, 2 reasons. First of all, we're at 40 minutes already. I think most would agree the pace is pretty brisk. I don't want this to be a 3-hour documentary marathon. Second reason is, there is a lot of content out there about every cruise port on Earth. and I just don't see what value my opinion of the destination would add to this review. I am considering putting out a very self-indulgent compilation of all of my time lapses going in and out of each port on this cruise though. We'll see if I can find time for that. You just saw the Mastroianni Grand Bar, and finally we have the Jazz Club and Lounge, which was one place they consistently did feature live music. Okay, time for dinner. There are 4 separate dining rooms on board. You'll be assigned one of them at either 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. The restaurants have slightly different decor, but they all serve the same menus. I couldn't find out much information about them pre-cruise, so I called Costa and asked if the agent knew about the restaurant specifically, and she did. And if she could recommend one of them, and she did, which was La Colombina, and she transferred our reservation to this restaurant. I'm very happy I called, because now that I know the locations of all the restaurants, I do think this is the best one to be at. Dinner here each night was 4 courses. Menus were via QR code since we didn't have the app, and while the servers were proficient and friendly, most of their time each night, it seemed, was spent trying to decipher what other tables were trying to order. Note that our servers were Filipino and spoke fluent English and some Italian, but it seemed like each one of the tables in their section spoke a different language. The food in here, though, was honestly the highlight of the cruise. Costa doesn't have a fantastic reputation for food, but the food here, 9 times out of 10, was seriously good. Appetizers were generally either cold and plated, or soups, with a few exceptions. Next up was the pasta course, not something that I would usually eat too much of, but everything was really good except for one of them, and the portions were all appropriately sized. This one being the bad one, a sad excuse for a lasagna with frozen peas and carrots on top. Those same frozen veg found their way into a couple main dishes, along with some very strange canned peaches. Besides that, everything was prepared well, seasoned well, sauced well, and hot. Even the desserts were a really pleasant surprise. Each night there was a no sugar added option, and there was just a lot of variety. Even on premium cruise lines, I feel like there's generally a lot of cakes that are either bone dry or sopping wet in liqueur, both of which I can't stand. Costa did very well though. So, as we pull out of Palermo and I wrap this up, the longest script that I've ever written, I need to remind you of one thing before I show you the score. My videos are always relative to the price that I pay. That's the only way a Hyatt Centric and a Four Seasons, or an economy seat and a first class suite can exist on the same channel. So please keep that in mind when seeing the scores. The prices were very reasonable, and so, given that, overall I was very happy with the cruise. It is not a style of cruising that I'd want for every cruise, but at the heart of it, I love cruising for actually being on the water and waking up in a new place every day. And for the money, Costa did that pretty well. And frankly, much better than I went into this cruise expecting them to. Costa, like any cruise line really, won't be for everyone. But there are surely some cruisers out there who would be equally pleasantly surprised by the experience. Okay, I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. The channel's first ever cruise tour and review. For my next review, I'm thinking I might need to split it into 2 videos in the same format just to make it more digestible, especially since the other cruises have much more interesting specialty restaurants, but we shall see. For now, if you're liking the content, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss a beat. My next cruise is on a 10-night Adriatic on the Celebrity Reflection, coming out in a month or 2. But my next video will be on Firefly from Singapore Seletar to Kuala Lumpur Subang. Oh, and thanks for watching till the end.